Found a nice piney camp spot, but in the morning I couldn't help but get some crawdads. I was definitely still in Cajun country, that's for sure. But I soon found myself in Arkansas, lower Ozarks, and in an all too familiar park. This is actually where my last adventure stopped, or stopped me, I should say. You see, a few years back, this national forest actually suffered from a massive flood, wiping out a number of houses and structures, and I think killing almost 30 people. And it's quite evident in the daylight, as you see now, all the abandoned buildings and whatnot, not to mention the huge number of potholes in the roads. So to say the least, this is kind of a sketchy area to be if you're in two-wheel drive and just exploring the area, especially considering there's no phone service for about 45 minutes from the entrance of this park. And let me tell you, this park's big. Lots of winding dirt roads. This time when I'm here, I did a lot of exploring, but I still didn't explore everything, that's for sure. And I'll give you guys a more in-depth look at all my exploits in this park in just a second. But first I want to explain just why I'm stopping here of all places. Well, you see, a few months before this, I was actually on a trip from the West Coast coming back to DC trying to make it in time for Christmas. So I was just driving all day trying to find national forests and parks where I could pull in for the night. You know, I try to avoid Walmart parking lots when I can. And it all seemed perfect. This seemed like a great place with plenty of places to camp, and it was. Well, until the next morning, when my car wouldn't start. And so that's when the real adventure began. And I don't know if any of you have been stranded with car troubles or whatnot in a national forest or park before, but it's pretty hard to get people's attention. You know, once this happened, I walked really far, about 10 miles or so, well, just to the entrance of the park, and then another 3 or 4 to the nearest little gas station. It's a little town, but it was one of those one-store towns, a little general store gas station where the guy was kind enough to let me use his phone. But along the way, I must have passed at least 3 groups of people, mostly hunters, people just ATVing and stuff, but no one would stop. I would wave my arms. Actually, I made a few trips back and forth. I tried looking up how I could fix the car, got oil. I mean, of course, first I called multiple tow services, but none of them could come out. The first one kept saying, oh, we'll be there in an hour, we'll be there in an hour, until the next day they never came and then wouldn't answer the call anymore. But that tow service was through insurance, so fair enough. I'll pay out of pocket for the best off-road recovery service I can find around. And there was one around, and they came in a giant wrecker. When I told them all the specifics, I figured they'd know to bring a small wrecker. I don't know if they just didn't have it or what, but it was all just kind of sketch, because the guy said, there's one thing you can do. I'll drive you out to where I'm going into the city for my next job. You know, he's driving all the way out to Tennessee for his next job or something. And I say, that would help me so much and everything. I'll offer to pay gas or whatever. And he just says he needs $500 up front. And he was toting around an unholstered gun in the back of his pants the whole time, and the whole thing just seemed pretty sketch. So I said no. I made a few more trips back and forth, and that's when someone actually offered to help. Well, sort of. There was this group of about 4 big pickup trucks, tinted windows and whatnot, waving and waving. They wouldn't stop. But in the back there was a side-by-side. It was a perfect opportunity. I jumped right in front of them, made them stop. I said, look, I don't know why you don't want to help me, but I've been stranded here for nearly a week. Can you just call someone, tell someone I'm here? You're leaving anyways, like, please help. I mean, at this point, I was just ready to give up. I was disgusting from walking back and forth. I just wanted to shower. I was cold. I just wanted a real bed to sleep on. I tried every option, believe me. And the last time I was in town and had service, my dad told me, like, if you go back this time and the car's still not working, you just need to you need to get someone to call 911 for you. But the guy in the side-by-side said, well, what's the problem? Are you hungry? We got food. We made a ton of food. It's like, he said there's no emergency, so who's he gonna call? You know, I said, please, just call 911. And he left. They said they would, because luckily his wife was sitting next to him and said, you have to. She was pulling out her phone, ready to do it. I mean, not that there was service there, but they were on their way out anyways. But actually, they came back about 5 minutes later, when they did end up agreeing that they would go call someone for me, but they came back 5 minutes later, and they brought me a granola bar and a bottle of water, and said, you know what, my buddy actually knows a park ranger here, so we're gonna have him come down. So I waited hours in the dark on this dirt road for no one to show. So the next day I made my final walk. And fortunately enough, on that final walk, I met a very nice guy. Guy in a cowboy hat with a trailer full of horses. He picked me up and he said, look, I've been in this situation before. What you need is you need a horse. They don't break down. That guy was cool. But yeah, he ended up bringing me back to the gas station. The gas station attendant was pretty surprised that I was still here after I said, oh, finally, the tow truck came. We thought it was all over. Well, no, I was back at the gas station, and this guy actually lives there. He has a room in the back, and he said, of course, again, I can sleep outside. And I started to get pretty cold that night, so I made a fire and actually found a really old abandoned antique fire truck that kept me warm. I stayed in there for the night. That was pretty cool. And then the next day, he said that his cousin was out here hunting and that he's going back to Hot Springs, about, I think, an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours away, nearest big town, and he said he'd bring me. So there, I was set and I made it out free. That guy was really nice. He wouldn't accept my money and he just wanted to help. He heard the story and just wanted to help. But from him, I did then learn that there are no park rangers in this national forest because it has been abandoned since this massive flood years ago. So I'm glad I found him. And then begins a whole new story of my adventures in Hot Springs, which is actually a really cool town, pretty big city actually, that's inside Hot Springs National Park. And if you stay tuned, I'll get to exploring that again in just a little bit. But anyways, seeing as that I had already missed the family Christmas that I was trying to get to on time in the first place, I could take my time in Hot Springs, and I spent about a week there trying to find the best option to get home, and I ended up just buying a new car. And I'm in the end very happy with the purchase. Now I can really do what I do a lot easier. 4-wheel drive, space and all, it's great. But I am really gonna miss my old car. It had been through a lot and meant a lot to me. It wasn't my first choice when I got it, but I did learn to love that thing. I mean, it was after all my first car, kinda like my first home. Before that, I had to convince my brother to let me take his car around the country. Now that thing saw a lot of action. Made it all the way to Glacier. But let's get back to exploring the Ozarks. After I got my other car taken care of, I was just pretty much looking for a nice spot to settle down, camp for maybe a week. And there was a lot to explore.